Muchas gracias, Alberto, Lática.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those presentations. We're going to begin a Q&A session then. Does anybody have a question? Please. Yes. I'm Victor Espino. I represent an association of mentally disabled in the Canary Islands. This tool, is it sellable? Is it transferable? Well, that's our objective. We got a subsidy from the Ministry of Industry in Plan Avanza, and what we want is to disseminate this. We are very interested in collaborating with the technicians so that this can be taken to special employment centres and everything related to the educational program that's available. The problem that we have to overcome is that of the monitorization of the machines and the installation of, the monitoring of the machines and the installation of the cameras. So if you want, we can talk afterwards. I can give you our card. We can be in contact in the future. One of the things that we want in the future is that all of our efforts can be transferred and other people can make the most of what we've learned and what we've developed. I'm Berta Maure. I work in Plan Avanza. I'm responsible for digital citizenship project. I would like to know what disabilities apart from Down syndrome, I imagine that will be included. I would like to know what other mental disabilities can be included in this. Well, we work with a group of mentally disabled people. We talk about groups. We don't distinguish. We know that there are people that have a greater degree of disability or lower degree, but we don't distinguish. We just have two groups. We have those with mental disabilities and those with mental illness. The degree of disability is what defines the tasks that the worker does. Initially, we have a mental illness or a mental disability. I don't know whether that's given you the answer you're looking for, but what I mean is that, yes, we have Down syndrome, we have people with relationship problems, we have people with 67% mental disability, others at 33%. All of our workers are disabled, and we have systems for evaluating so that we can get to know their disabilities, to get to know these individuals and adapt the training processes to their needs. We don't label them, but rather we get to know them. We get to know about their abilities, and on the basis of that, we define the processes. We draw up individualized, personalized plans, and we establish the actions that need to be taken so that each person can acquire skills and progress. And I just want to say one thing. When we talk about people and their limitations, when we talk about the limitations of mentally disabled people, we have to be very clear. The limitations, well, we are the ones that establish their limitations. They wouldn't see any limitations for themselves.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, not just so much the use you're making within your company, but to what extent you can extrapolate this model to train other activities, be more general. For example, safety procedures. Any company can have that anyone should become familiar, any employee should be familiar with them, including employees with or workers with a mental disability. There are issues here that need to be, they need to understand in case of a difficulty or a problem, to understand how they have to react. So to what extent do you think, again, that this model can be reused elsewhere to show ways, like you were saying, communication, for example, or in other type of activities that we may find across in other companies? I'm thinking specifically on safety. Well, I think following our learning process, I think this is basically something that can be used for any kind of activity. In fact, when we first launched the project, one of the first things that we discussed with the CEAT was to understand to what extent, or what percentages of the tools we could actually harness to use to develop new simulators for other activities. So that was our initial discussion, and we felt that 60-65% could be reused to develop other simulators. We do have other experiences that we're currently developing. We've developed a simulator using another programming driver. So for example, for replenishment, the replenisher, there are 14 tasks, and 10 of these tasks are simulated through a similar environment. It's not such in-depth or immersion type. It's more of a video game. You train, but you're generally training. You're training all the activities you have to carry out that a person doing replenishment has to do. You have to, use a forklift, and you live the experience. And through that experience, your learning is much greater, much more efficient. So I think this can definitely be reused and applied and extrapolated to anything we think we need to improve. Certainly in training. Now, on safety, which obviously we're very much concerned about, we're working in a hostile environment. We're using risks, tools that are dangerous and risky. So safety is definitely a concern, and we've built that into our tool. I mean, none of these tools work properly if they use all the protection devices that that the tool requires you to wear, and you have positive feedback. If you need to put the hearing up, something missing, and the tutor tells you something's missing. You're not wearing something. Do you know what it is? So you give an alternative. So once you have the full gear on, then you can carry on and start working. You can start using this equipment. Whatever particular equipment, the stripper or what have you, or the chainsaw. A question on the GTT, on the task manager. You said that the person is the user that points out which activity they're conducting. I'm doing this. I'm moving on now to this next one. What's the experience been like in this process? To what extent someone, a user, can meet and perform the task? Was that difficult? Do they forget? Do they need to be reminded? Sometimes they use it. Maybe they don't use it in a correct way, or skipping tasks, that kind of thing. But can you comment on that, please? What's your experience? Well, the experience, as I said in my presentation, this software, very much in line of what my colleagues just mentioned also, is must be adapted. You have to be able to adapt it and customize it. One of the errors when first I was testing it is, in fact, someone with a task with different 15 tasks to perform, and the tutor just inputted all 15 tasks with subtasks and so on. Everything that had to be done. So of course the employee wasn't using it, or spent 2 hours trying to figure out what to do and going up and down, scrolling up and down, what they had to do, what not. So technology has to be a means to an end. So taking it from there, what we did is we developed a criteria of use for administrator, and that is if an employee does 7 out of 10 tasks, then you only have to put those 3 tasks that they had difficulty. So they only use the PDA when they're stuck with one of the 3 tasks, and you only put alarms in those items where the employee always forgets, or those tasks where they use more time than they should be. So obviously the application. You have the application, but then you have to put the right input, the tasks, the alarms, the checklists. in which the employee may have problems, or that you want to strengthen or improve the training, and so on. In other words, you can't throw everything into the handset because it's not useful and it's not necessary. So a very important aspect of this in the GTT is not just the use of technology, but also the customizing that technology to the needs of each employee. When we started doing that, there was a huge difference. It made a huge difference in the employee, and we saw considerable progress, especially in those employees where we had customized the work plan. I'd also like to ask on the trainer, the labor trainer, the work trainer, is obviously a very key component because they have to make sure they input the right elements into that handset for the user of that handset. So can you comment on how they view, what's been the feedback, how they view your tool from their point of view? The benefit that this has been to them, being able to use this, and how do they find the use of this kind of systems? Well, there's all sorts of feedback here and all sorts of opinions, but very positive in general. The tutors or the person in charge of the task or what have you, normally is a person that may have 10, 15 people in charge. They're in charge of 10, 15 people, and they're managing all that. So it really releases as part of the more time. Instead of having to run around, putting out fires everywhere, what they're doing is focusing on a fewer number of employees where the tool is not adequate, and the rest can be more independent using the tool, so they don't need to do check on so many things. They're more independent. They can do their work in a more independent way. So for them, really, the first thing is obviously it's a larger effort. First of all, it takes more time. You need to learn to use it, and you develop a work plan for each employee. But then but then it pays off. It pays off because you're released for more time. You don't have to constantly be reminding upon constant feedback, because the handset helps and does all that for them. So in the end, it really is a load off your workload, if I may, because all the employees are more independent and they make less mistakes. Are there any other questions or comments, perhaps? Okay, well, once again, I'd like to thank the speakers for joining us today, for sharing their experience with us. And I have to say, I've learned a lot, quite frankly. And I'd like to thank you all also for coming this morning. I hope it's been very interesting for you. And again, thank you for coming. Thank you. Bye.